How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the Black Metal Rebellion. I'm your host, Jesse Morgan, aka Slammerella, and today we have another metal review to do for you. And if you saw the title of this video, you'll know that that is A Mountain of Death by Terror Machine. Thank you, Asborn Ostafels, for this physical copy sent to me so that I can review it in all of its glory here on the channel. There it is there. I feel like the CD is the same as the Ingen Retreat EP that came before this. So yeah, needless to say, they have a release before this one called Ingen Retreat. I'll have a picture of it probably here for you. That came out in 2020. This, however, came out March 1st of this year, 2024. But Terror Machine officially started in 2018. Terror Machine are a kind of side project or offshoot from their main band, Flucht, or possibly Fluked. I never know how to pronounce that. They are a straightforward black metal project with some sprinklings of other stuff thrown in there, but mostly black metal. They are from Norway, so of course the godfathers of black metal. And the members of Terror Machine this time around are Asbjorn Ostafels on vocals, guitar, and now bass as well. And on drums we have Olavind Nesset. So yeah, it's a two-man project at the moment. It used to have three members. Ulf Fogerdale from Flucht was in this as well at some point, doing bass, of course, for the last EP, but it is now a two-man project. So yeah, the artwork for this one is interesting, fairly simple, very black and white look with a skull-looking mountain in the background with some tanks going over some like muddy apocalyptic grounds. The back of the case is just a close-up of one of the tanks and the mountain. Not too much more information on the back, except that it came from Stench From Below Records, and it shows the 3 tracks that are included on this release. So fairly bare bones type of artwork and presentation for this. You know, it could be even more minimum. It could just be like all black with like a white logo and white track listing on the back. So it's a little bit more than like super duper bare bones, but it's not too overly complicated and doesn't bombard you with a million like copyrights and this and that's on the back. So yeah, it's a very DIY feel from Terror Machine this time around. So let's talk a bit about what to expect on this new EP, A Mountain of Death. The vocals are a raspy, airy mid-tone type of growl. You could also expect some throaty, crackling screams and some kind of demonic creature-sounding vocals as well. I will say that the vocals are kind of inconsistent here and there, and there's a varied technique throughout depending on what track or what part of the song you're at. So there is that. Let's move on to the guitars. The guitars are really low-tuned this time. I'm going to say A or drop A or so. They have a rattling, buzzing tone with some high gain or distortion going on. And of course, you could expect the odd black thrash type power chords on this release with some grooving, chugging riffs, some dissonant power chords, which was an interesting twist. Wasn't expecting that on this for some reason. And there's the odd tremolo, of course, because this is kind of like a blackened, doomy death metal release from them this time around. They had a brief, clean, slow strummed section mid third track, which is Touch of Death, and they even had a kind of bouncy corn riff at the end of the third track as well. Again, Touch of Death. Of course, this being a more doomier release, they had the slow, droning, doomier riffs. Moving on to the bass, it wasn't super duper discernible, and it was not low in the mix, but the thing with the bass was this time is that it was super fuzzy and low tuned, and when you mix that with the low tuned gain of the guitars, it was hard to discern at what point what was doing the bass work and what was the rumbling low tones of the guitar. But that being said, the bass added more noise and rumble to the mix in general. Alright, let's move on to the drums. They had this flat, muted kick drum tone. It was mixed, so it was fairly noticeable though. It wasn't like super high in the mix, but you could definitely tell when those kicks were happening. Also had the semi-ponky I know, a weird descriptor for a snare, but for those that are in the music business, you'll know what I mean. It had a ponky sounding snare with a little bit of rattle to it. The cymbals were very bright and splashy, sort of high in the mix too, maybe a little bit higher than I would have liked. However, there was some really good tom work, and the mix and tone of the toms were good, some excellent rolls going for them. And of course, you'd expect some blast beats and some double kicks for this project, and of course even some Euro blast mixed in for good measure. Let's move on to favorite tracks. Alright, so since there is only 3 tracks on this EP, it's going to be a little bit different from my normal favorite track section of a review. This time I'm just going to rank the songs from my least to most favorite. So starting off with the least is track number 1, A Mountain of Death. It just had the least variety. It relied on the one main beginning riff style of fast chug 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 throughout, a little too much. Then the second riff that they offered in the song was kind of boring, and then this kind of mediocre middle breakdown type of riff came in and dragged out till the end. So yeah, this one wasn't too great for me. The next track, however, is track number 2. You can kind of see the pattern when I'm going in here, and that is Shed the Blood. This was the fastest, most energetic song on the EP, and I definitely feel like they should have opened up this release with this song instead. And finally, moving to my most favorite track on this EP, that is number 3, of course, Touch of Death. This just had the most variety overall. It took more risk, obviously, with having a clean section and that bouncy ending corn style riff, but I definitely enjoyed that the most out of the 3 songs on this EP. Let's talk about my overall thoughts. A Mountain of Death is a big direction change for Terror Machine, and honestly a bit of a step down from Ink and Retreat. Terror Machine tried a new approach with this new EP and may have discovered what does or doesn't work for their sound. Perhaps taking what lessons they've learned from both of these outings can be used to craft a superb full-length effort in the future. A Mountain of Death, albeit not surpassing the previous release, I feel was a necessary part of the creative process, however, and this EP definitely needed to be made at some point in their career. Might as well happen right after their first one so that they can compare both and see where to go from there. With that being said, let's move on to weaknesses or improvements. One thing is I noticed a tighter production for the drums would have been better, mix and volume wise. The kick and snare drum tones could have been a little better or more refined as well. And speaking of refined, I feel a more refined and controlled vocal style could possibly be honed in for the next release. I feel like it was probably done better in the first EP as well. Not sure what changed going from the first EP to A Mountain of Death, but maybe it's something to look into. Thirdly, I would say a distinct or more discernible difference between the guitar and bass sounds would be good. It was slightly hard again to discern what was the bass low notes and what was the guitar low notes, with the mix of distortion and gain and rumble and fuzz going on for both instruments. And lastly, in my opinion, a better guitar tone, so in which I mean maybe less muddy and digitally processed. I felt the guitar tone in this had a lower quality than the last release as well. And in regards to the guitar riff wise, I honestly prefer groovy thrash riffs as opposed to droning doom riffs. Just a personal preference, but I feel like if those could be more prevalent in the next release, that'd be better than kind of depressing, doomy, drony type of riffs. But it all boils down to preference, of course, because music is art and art is subjective. So with all that being said, I'm still going to give Terror Machine's new EP, A Mountain of Death, a solid 5.5 out of 10. No, it's not perfect. And yes, it is a bit of a stretch from the last EP. However, again, I feel like this was a necessary creative process for Terror Machine to really hone in their sound and figure out what works for the band and what doesn't work for the band. And I feel like if they took away all of the positive, better composition and production parts from both of the releases, they could add up to a really fantastic full-length album in the future. So despite this release being slightly lower ranked for me, I'm still looking forward to new Terror Machine in the future. And if you're looking to pick this up, as always, links will be in the description box below. Thank you again, Asbjorn, for this physical copy to review on the channel. Much luck to you guys in the future for this project. Can't wait to see what else you come up with, either Flucht or Terror Machine or what else. Cheers until the next video. For glory, for the rebellion, Slammerella out.